The hold music. The launch will begin shortly. Ooh. Stick these things in here. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. We'll be kicking off proceedings in about 3 minutes or so. So settle in and listen to the soothing sounds of this ukulele. Not a guitar that I left in the wash. That's a different thing. That got warped, I can't play it. Ooh, lovely tea. So you probably have enough time to make yourself a little cup of tea if you want, or a beverage. Biscuits are, of course, optional. Well, I say optional, but I mean, have a biscuit.
Well, they're obligatory if you're Irish, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Otherwise, tea is too wet.
And then you do the dunk and, you know, play that dangerous game. Brady saying fig rolls. Yeah, good choice. Good solid, you know, center. It's never going to be in danger of sort of falling off or half it falling into the tea. And then you've got yourself some sort of biscuit soup, and nobody wants that. Ginger nuts, that's either a biscuit suggestion or an insult to me. Either way. Yeah, I don't mind ginger nuts. We're having a biscuit preamble talk here, Raymond. Funnily enough, I like ginger nuts when they're stale. And they're a little bit softer. It's the problem I have with ginger nuts is they're too hard a biscuit.
Oh, now I see where you're getting your. Only seen the comments.
You're looking at the comments, yeah. You just, Raymond, you just thought I was talking about.
I was going. Where's he going? I thought, you know, when you were saying solid biscuits, and I thought you were trying to be smart, and I was saying, like, you know, I thought you were going to actually say a fig roll is a pre-prostate biscuit. You know. And,
so I think we're ready to go. Someone's saying stale ginger nuts. We're gonna have to park the stale ginger nut talk for now. Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us here at this virtual book launch. This is a first for me. I've never hosted a book launch, virtual or otherwise. I was asked by Raymond and by the Marie Keating Foundation to host the book launch. And, you know, it's a pandemic. All the pubs are closed, all the restaurants are closed, you can't visit people's houses. So I had no excuse. No, I was happy to do it. I was approached by Raymond through Stephen Bradley, who he is virtual friends with. I would be friends with his wife, Deirdre O'Kane, the comedian. So Dee got in touch with me and passed on my details to Raymond, who asked if I'd write a foreword for his book. And I said, of course, because I always say yes to pretty much everything. I think it's a good positive attitude to have. So Raymond sent over the book, and now just a little bit of history about my own personal history with cancer. It is something that has affected my family on both sides. My mum's father died of bowel cancer. My mother had bowel cancer when I was 21. In fact, her surgery was on my 21st birthday. So that wasn't a great party. And on my dad's side, his sister died from it. My uncle died from it very young. He was 28. And I was diagnosed with bowel cancer when I was 36. So I basically had been a stand-up comedian for a number of years by that stage. So I personally used humor to sort of deal with the very difficult journey that I went on, which lasted a few years and a couple of surgeries and chemo and all of that stuff, physically and emotionally very kind of demanding. But I did manage to laugh throughout, and I had friends who, wouldn't give me any sympathy and wouldn't take me seriously, and just made sure that they kept me laughing and kept me included in the joke, which kind of kept me grounded in the real world, I thought. So Raymond, I guess I'll just start by asking you, what was the kind of the impetus for writing the book, and like when did it begin? Was it during treatment or after, or what was the driving force behind getting the book written?
Yeah, I often wonder what was the driving force behind it. I honestly don't know. That's the truthful answer. Because I know we had mentioned it the other day, and you said you'd asked me, and I've been thinking about it since. And I think for me, the first chapter in the book was written on the 13th of August, 2017, and in July 2016 was when I actually started the whole prostate thing. So in July 2016, I noticed my PSA rise. Well, my doctor, my GP noticed, and then I went back 4 weeks later and gone up another point. So he said, okay, you got to get investigated. And I did. And then I got biopsies done, lots of biopsies done in December. And I got sepsis from that and ended up with 5 infections post that, and then in the hospital for a number of times. But the strange thing was the biopsies came back that I was all clear. So you can imagine, my wife and I were absolutely delighted that December that we got the all clear news. Meanwhile, I was in hospital with sepsis, but it didn't matter. We thought, well, at least you haven't got cancer. And then a journey started at that point with different infections. And then on the 11th of August, I had my father had to go in to the same urologist. I organized my father to go into the urologist. He had something wrong. He wanted to get it checked out. And my dad's appointment was 9 o'clock in the morning on that Friday, the 11th of August. And my appointment was 5 o'clock that evening. And his secretary sort of said to him, you can't leave Raymond waiting so many hours before you tell him when he's going to be here with his father. You've got to see the two of them together. So Selena wasn't with me, my wife. So Selena, I rang Selena after, said, look, it's confirmed I've got cancer. And we went a bit numb, to say the least. And then I came home. That was that Friday. And then on Sunday morning, I woke up and we were just having our breakfast. I grabbed the laptop and I started typing. And that was the start of it. And I suppose it was just because the way the book is written, there's no descriptive passages in it. It's all dialogue. The whole book is a dialogue. You could actually put it into a play.
Yeah.
So as you know, you've had a read of it, and it was really two voices. And I think it was good for me because these two voices were very non-political correctness within them. They didn't care what they said. And they allowed me the space to question everything, and at the same time to make fun of myself. And as you said, humor can get you through a lot, you know.
Yeah.
And so it evolved from there. I then started coming down, and every other few weeks I'd write another passage or whatever, and it sort of got done. And then I actually thought I'd finished the book. Well, in my mind, I thought I'd finished it, and then I was getting another book published, and it was actually this book I sent to the publisher, and I said, "This is what I want to publish," and they said, "Well, you can't publish it like that. You got to introduce the voices and who they are." And I said, "No, you don't. They introduce themselves." So, anyway, cut a long story short, published another book in January, and what happened with that book was they liked that descriptive passage so much leading into these guys that they said, "No, leave the guys out of it," and that's how I ended up publishing my first book second and my second book first.
Now, I should mention, I forgot to mention at the beginning that at the end of this, we're going to be talking to a few people throughout the hour, and at the end, if people want to, we're going to have a Q&A section. So if people want to send in questions as the launch goes on, and then we can look at those and answer questions. You can ask me questions, or Raymond, or some of our people coming up, Nora Casey or Liz Yates from the Marie Keating Foundation. I do see one, we can talk about ginger nuts. Someone is asking, have the two headbangers always been the voices in your head? Or did their arrival coincide with the cancer diagnosis treatment from Simon Daly?
Yeah, so my diagnosis was, as I said, was somewhat different. They diagnosed an aggressive form of prostate cancer, and they have a scaling mechanism.
Yeah.
The Gleason score goes from 1 to 10, and I was 9, and they have T1, 2, and 3, and I was 3C, and so it was you know, at one stage, we really didn't know what the future was. So for me, which I'll get to later, it ended up being surgery for me, thankfully. Although when you read the book, there's a lady doctor I refer to as Dr. Joy, because she was full of the joys of spring. She wanted, when I met her, wanted me to start actually, before I left her room, she wanted to put me on hormone treatment and everything that day. And I went to my urologist the next day, and he said, "We'll hold off everything." So the voices in the head, were they always there? I always talk to myself.
Yeah.
I always work out things in my head, and I have conversations in my head, which I think most people do. Although I've been doing the 500,000 steps for November this past few days, started doing that. And one of the things I notice with people now is they're all running with earphones in their head.
Yeah, yeah.
So to me, when I'm walking, I'm writing in something else at the moment. I'm going through that, and I was going through this, and I'll go through work. And so actually, although you're walking and you're out in the fresh air, you're actually probably doing a day's work anyway, because you're unraveling everything.
Yeah.
You're giving yourself that time and that creativity time as well in the forest and that, because there's no interruptions from cars, you know.
Yeah.
So I were they always there? They probably were always there, but now they have their own space.
Yeah, it's a kind of like an inner monologue, I guess, because I mean, for me, it's like doing stand-up, and specifically doing stand-up about having cancer when I had cancer. It's almost like a conversation with you're having a conversation with the audience, but the audience aren't saying anything.
Yeah.
But they're listening, and they're understanding, and they're their part of the conversation is the laughter that you get back, hopefully. But and
I think with the other thing I was trying to do in the book was I had been given some literature to read, but it was very technical and very medical orientated, and then
very dry.
And I didn't want to Google too much, because I thought I was paying these consultants a phenomenal amount of money, that I wanted to get my value out of them. So let them I know they spent 12 or 15 years in medical school. I don't want to go to Dr. Google and find out, like
you want to put your faith in the experts.
Yeah, like you'd read Google and it would say, well, on the first moon of the third Thursday, when there's a 3 in the date at 6 minutes past midnight, put one leg facing west and the other leg facing north, and turn your head to the southwest, and you'll get cured. And if you happen to have a green leaf beside you, eat that, because that may resolve all your problems, and everything will be fine. You don't have cancer anymore, sure. I mean, this is the universe is going to cure you of it,
Rub an overripe avocado on your head or something.
Exactly. And a fig leaf around your rear end and things like that. The fig leaf, of course, would now fit after prosectomy surgery. It would cover all your embarrassments, which you'll get to later if people read the book. So, I mean, it was trying to take all that medical jargon, and because actually, when you read it, and although the two voices are, they're saying, well, what's your therapy? What's his options? And, well, there's all, wait and watch, and it goes through them all. But it's actually, they're actually all the options you will get in a medical book. And then there's the three surgical, there's open surgery, there's keyhole, or there's robotic surgery, so they joke about things. Can he phone a friend? Can he take a 50-50 or whatever, and so it was bringing a bit of humor into it, because I just wanted to lighten it up a bit. And I also wanted to give people an experience of what it was like to be in someone's head who had it. I think that was the most important thing, and that doesn't necessarily go whether it's for prostate cancer, or whether you're the one that has the prostate cancer, or whether you're the one who's caring for someone with prostate cancer. And actually, although the book is about my journey with prostate cancer, whether it's cervical or breast cancer or colon cancer, it really doesn't matter. It's a cancer that impacts you. Because I don't know how you felt about it, Ed, but I found that the medical profession were wonderful. They did a great job of getting rid of the cancer. The mind is still coping, is lagging way behind the body healing. And
it's kind of like, and especially when it's with me as well, it was like, it was quite advanced. So it was like, I basically had a week to sort of psychologically get used to it before I was straight into surgery and treatment and all that. So you kind of, you like you were saying, I didn't want to Google stuff. I didn't kind of want to know too much, because I trusted the medical professionals, and I was more concerned about how it was affecting my family, my brothers, and my parents and my friends, and telling them was probably the most difficult aspect of it for me, and joking about it. Just it kind of came natural, but also for me, I think it was like it's a coping mechanism, and it's a way for it to not completely overwhelm you and overwhelm your mind and your body, because the stress of it.
Because even at I mean they say, don't they, like even at funerals in Ireland, there's a lot of laughter and banter, and I know a lot of people say, oh, the Irish are it's particularly over COVID, and that people were saying, oh, the Irish are very good at doing death and funerals, and I actually think we're very bad at it. What I think we're very good at is celebrating life, and talking about life and talking about their life. But we actually, if you think about the way we cope in a funeral, we actually park the person who is gone, and we talk about them in the present as much as we can, and we can talk about what they did and get a laugh out of it. But the vacuum that life leaves when they leave your life is massive, depending on how much they were loved or you loved them or whatever, of course. But most people, it's a massive vacuum that's left behind, and I think that's why our humor kicks in immediately when there's a tragedy. It's the Irish are out with the humor stick and joking about it,
Okay, so at this stage now, we're going to bring in another guest, John Wall. Where is John? There he is.
There he is.
Now, John is, has the book. I have the book as well. That's what it looks like in a mirror. The front of it looks like in a mirror. So John is currently, according to your Twitter profile, you're living with prostate cancer, and you're an air traffic controller, which must be a much easier job these days. So you've obviously been able to take the time out to come and have a chat. So yourself and Raymond I'm gonna leave you guys talk for a little bit because both of you know more about this than me. So if you guys just want to
sure
fire ahead and chat, and I will mute myself and listen and learn. So
I see what you did there. Fire ahead to the fireside chat.
Fire ahead with the fireside chat. There we go. Excellent.
Raymond.
John, how are you?
I'm fantastic, and thanks for the honor.
Well, thank you for coming.
Pardon the pun.
Exactly.
That's black humor for everyone out there.
It's the only chance you get to come when you got prostate cancer.
It's a common thread. It's a common thread. I apologize if I've offended anyone.
Yeah,
so,
I mean,
how are you doing? How are you keeping?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. You know, like yourself, what is it you're saying is carpe diem?
Carpe diem.
So you know, live in it. I mean, you can only live it anyway.
That's what we do. That's what we do.
And it's what everybody has to do. And I know your cancer is a lot more advanced than my cancer.
You know, one thing I've learned, Raymond, is some people have said that to me, but we don't compare because we're all living with it. And regardless whether we're stage 1 or stage 4, we all help each other, and we all learn from each other's experience, and it really works. I mean, you mentioned the 4 tenors in the book, a WhatsApp group, and it was never about the stage of cancer that any one of us had. It was about the friendship. It was about swapping stories. It was about making each other laugh, smile, cry when we wanted to cry, a shoulder when we need a shoulder. And I think that's what's important, is just friendships, and companionships.
And I think you're right there, because what, you know, it should never be, no one's illness should be ever scaled against someone else's illness to what level they're at, because exactly what you said, whether it doesn't matter what level it is, it's individual to that person, and their journey is individual as well, because the journey you go on is actually, I believe anyway, an amalgamation of where your life has brought you to that point in time. There will be things that have happened that may impact on your journey going forward. I mean, I know our group, we have quite a laugh, and particularly around one of the things, I think one of the commonality things that we all had was sometimes when we met people and they said, oh, you know, like I remember meeting someone so distinctly. I was out walking with Selena one day, and they said, oh my goodness, I heard you had cancer. And I said, yeah, that's right, I'm getting treated for it. And she said, oh, I'm terribly, terribly sorry. Do you mind me asking, what is it? And I told her it was prostate cancer. And then it was almost dismissive.
Oh, that's the easy one to get.
That's the man flu cancer.
Yeah.
You know, and
that's why we're having this chat as well, because we changed the way people view prostate cancer. We're encouraging men to talk, not just about their physical health, their mental health, a combination of both. We're talking about our bodies like we've never talked before, and encouraging a whole conversation, and in so doing, creating awareness, first of all, and encouraging people that maybe were a little bit embarrassed about what was happening to their bodies as a result of prostate cancer, or indeed any issue in life. But encouraging men to talk is, for me anyway, is a huge part of this. And ironically enough, then with the book, you have actually, is it 2 men, 2 women, man and a woman, whatever, I don't know, but it's 2 people talking, and you're encouraging a conversation. And actually, a story I told earlier on, when I read the book, I started reading the book in my own voice, and then I started reading trying to read it anyway, in 2 Dublin voices, or Dublin accents, I should say. And it all got very confusing. And then I started to introduce the South African accent because you mentioned it in the book. And it flowed, and I got there, and I ended up with a combination of accents, and my imagination was just running away with me. At the end, I just got immersed in the conversation. It was, I describe it as a surreal read, a surreal experience. It's very different. You say it's like a play, but it's read like a conversation. There's a very distinct story.
Yeah, like, and the way it was written was, I mean, it's dated. Each chapter is dated. So when Stephen Bradley reads it, he needn't think that I robbed that idea from his book. I thought of it well before his did.
So he's robbing it from you.
I just didn't get around to publishing mine first. But no, in all honesty, when I had dated, because they were just actually on my computer, it was just, there was no title for the chapter. The title only went in when it went together. I suddenly thought, crap, I've no title on each chapter. So I started quickly merged, well, what would I title this one, and so forth. So I put them in. So it was just dates. And the conversation is actually written on the date that you see in the book. That's the day that conversation was written. So the conversation actually spans a full 3 years. It goes from August 2017 right through to August 2020. That's when I handed it over to the publisher. So, I mean, the intention when I started, this was just for my own sake, to get this torment out of my head. And I only thought it was going to be 6 months or something. And actually, as you're reading the book, you'll see the guys think they're finished, and they're getting really annoyed because they're not allowed to talk anymore. And they're going like, well, how the hell are we going to ever be able to talk again? And then it's like, you know, and when you're actually typing and writing it, you actually forget that I don't know how to explain the experience, because you're writing a conversation between two people talking about you, and you actually forget you're the one writing it nearly.
I felt it was very moving towards the end as you introduced your dad into the equation, and the addendum, obviously, the illness and that element to your own life. The whole thing was personal. I suppose for myself, I knew a lot of what you were going through, and then you get to the end, and it's beautifully written, and the poem that you wrote at the end of the book is very, very special.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think I would have done the book justice if I didn't put his last bit in, because it had to be a book about the entire journey. And when I decided to write it, I remember saying to Selena, like I did with the other book, I got her permission to write things in the other book as well, because there's a lot of sensitive material about our relationship and everything's in it. And I said, when I was writing this one, okay, it's funny and it's humorous, but you know, it's detailed humor. So, because I think if you're going to write it, you have to write it all. You can't skip the bits that you don't want to talk about. I mean, I'm not going to say what it stands for, but there's a whole thing around there about vagina. And if anybody wants to know if anybody wants to know what a vagina is, well, then they're going to have to buy the book and read it. Now, if they Google it, my good friend in Portugal tells me it means paper in Spain, and
that's not what you mean.
Portuguese, but it definitely doesn't mean paper in my book. And
what does it mean, Raymond? What does it mean exactly?
What does it mean? But wouldn't that spoil the reading the book? I can tell them. I have no problem.
No, we won't go there. It's before the watershed. What time is it? It's only 7:25. Oh no.
It's almost like the horizontal spray that you get after surgery. That I think every man I've spoken to who has had their prostate removed has suffered with it, where that's one that you can tell even in the watershed, because it is water spray. And it's when you actually sit down and for some unknown reason, you're back to being a little baby again, and everything shoots out through that gap in the silage. I've wet my trousers more times that way than actually wetting them going, because I've overdone my pad.
It's something you talk about quite a bit, is the pads in the book.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the pads were a mechanism for managing my progress, because when I went to get the bag taken off me, which was the day of Storm Ophelia, and I said to the wife, I don't care what storm's out there, you're driving me to the hospital. This bag is coming off. So we went to the hospital, and they took the bag off, and lovely nurse male nurse says to me, now, Raymond, when you stand up, do it gently, put your legs on the floor and relax, and then stand up. Now you will, he had a pad on him. He said, you will have some leakage, but don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. My goodness, I stood up and it was Niagara Falls. I said, you gotta be kidding me. And then he says, now go off. And I think he said, when you pass something and you've emptied your bladder, you can go home.
Yeah, it's something we all identify with. Anyone that has had their prostate removed. And some of us, I still wear pads. I have to, but I have friends too that hate them, and that don't wear them, but don't need them either. They've worked hard on, I suppose, regaining control is what you have to do, and it works for some people and not for others. But a very important discussion nonetheless. Yeah,
but that's the thing, isn't it? It works for some and it doesn't for others, and just don't beat yourself up. So go in thinking positive. It's going to, and if it doesn't, life does go on. You will. Now, having said that, it is, and again, it nearly boils down to what you work at, because when you go into the work environment, it is that the whole head, like, you've got to get over that concept of being in the work environment and wearing it. But it's really sad to think I've known of some people who could not cope with the whole post-surgery, and their life just wasn't worth it as far as they were concerned.
Yeah, because as you say, it's not just about the treatment. It's how you deal with life after treatment. And that's very, very important when, so many mental and physical, when it comes to prostate cancer, there's so many changes and so many things that you have to cope and deal with. And it's a whole new world. And it's one thing to have successful treatment or ongoing treatment, whatever the case may be, for prostate cancer. But it's quite another then to come to terms with the after effects of the surgery, of the treatment, of the diagnosis, of the prognosis. And that can be just as difficult for many men and their families.
And whatever relationship you're in with your partner, whether, doesn't matter, it's it changes that for some as well. It's a major change. We've all, another bit in the book is that famous visit I took to the hospital for the elephant pump.
Oh yeah, the salesperson, or the guy that was trying to sell you the pump. No?
Well, the guy that was trying to sell me the pump.
God almighty.
Our good friend Bill, we reckon he had the exact same salesman, because when he read the book and he said, "Oh, the cheese and onion man, I got him too."
Oh. I had visions of that conversation. I could smell the cheese and onion.
Yeah.
And I was reading it in the book, and it puts. Don't go there. Don't go there.
Very, very sensitive.
I see Edwin is in.
Yeah,
It must mean that we've overrun.
Well, there I am. I'm unmuted. No, you're just on time. I was just waiting for you to finish up there. Lots of teasers for the book there. And lots of laughter, which I enjoyed. It did kind of remind me when you're talking about the sort of the physical challenges of it and the pads and such. Because I mean, for my bowel cancer, I had an ileostomy bag, which is like a colostomy bag, but a temporary measure, which is the sort of thing that, and I know to some people that may seem frightening, and same with the with what you guys are going through, but it is something that you kind of can laugh about, and you can kind of learn to live with it, because you have to, I suppose.
I think a great advocate for that whole having to wear the bags is Brian Kennedy. He calls them the twins. And every chance, typical Brian, every chance he gets, the zipper's down and the twins are out.
Well, that's it. It's like, and it's it normalizes it, and it makes it, because not being aware of it and then finding out about it, like it's this big shadowy kind of secret. It's like, it's just a part of it, and it's a thing that you have to deal with going forward. So yeah. Why not laugh about it? So now we're going to bring in John. Thank you very much.
Remember, Re Keating Foundation, buy the book.
Good plug, very good plug. I need people to do all the plugs. Keep your questions coming in. We're going to have a Q&A at the end. But now I'd like to introduce Nora Casey. Nora Casey is a broadcaster, an author, the friendliest dragon you'll ever meet. And Nora's going to talk about her own very personal cancer journey. She's been affected, and she knows obviously people who've been affected. She's written about her husband, and so hello, Nora, welcome.
Thank you.
So yeah, I think you're going to talk about just basically dealing with it as a family member. Now you've had your own personal history with breast cancer.
Yeah.
And
I think firstly I wanted to say that was great to listen to Raymond and John. And I loved the book. Raymond very kindly sent it to me, and I was thinking, how am I going to read this book before Thursday? And actually, it's a really readable book. It's great. I was reminded recently of whether you were the Holy Trinity or Princess Diana. You know, 3 people in that book, you and the 2 bangers in your head. But it's a very unique way of allowing people to do a big deep dive into your mindset. And I was very grateful for reading it, actually, because you gave me an insight into all the things that were probably happening inside the head of Richard when he was going through his cancer journey, but never got a chance to say it. I think, first of all, I know you said I was a dragon, and people always see me as that, but I grew up in the Phoenix Park. My dad and my granddad were rangers, you know. I went to a Desh school in Stony Batter. If you asked me, I'd never have said I'd be a businesswoman. I'd never met one. I wouldn't even know what they looked like. They were just men in politics and public life. And in the school I went to, there's a couple of pictures on the wall. There's Joan Burton and myself, and she's no spring chicken and I'm not either. So the chances of me ending up being somebody who went on to own businesses and invest in businesses are very remote. In fact, my first job was a nurse. I went to Scotland to train as a nurse in Loch Lomond. And anyone who starts off in life wanting to be a nurse is not wanting to make billions, is not wanting to rule the world. I wanted to make a difference to people in their lives. And I think I went on into journalism in my 20s, still stays with me, my journalism, broadcasting, print journalism. But by the time I was coming out of my 30s, I was a very different person. And that was because I was with a man, my husband, for 9 years, who was abusive and controlling. I've written about it. I've done a TED talk. I won't get into it, but just to say that these terrible things that happen to you in your life sometimes turn you into something very unexpected. And for me, driving away from that house, finally, after 9 years, in my little red car, I promised myself that I would never allow anybody to own me again. And he owned me every which way, both, you know, financially as well as in terms of psychologically, and he was very violent. And from then onwards, I decided I would just stand on my own 2 feet and I would, you know, make my own money, and I'd never be in hock to anybody. So when people see me now and I have an intolerance of bullies and lose a lot of business, I guess, and walk out of rooms, they say that's the dragon in her. It's not, it's the survivor in me. I am who I am because of those things that happened. But you know what? I went on to live a really successful life, married Richard, who was the love of my life. If you get a shit one, you get a really good one the second time round. We finally had a baby after a couple of years of IVF, so very longed for boy, Dara, who's still my saving grace. So like everybody else, I think when I was on News Talk, I was asked to interview Ruth Field. The women on here will know she wrote a book called Run, Fat Bitch, Run. Very popular book amongst women. But she brought out a new book called Get Your Shit Together. And Chris Donahue ran for the hills, and the editor said to me, go on there and interview her now on the line in London. But if you say shit at 8:20 in the morning, I'll murder you, because the kids are in the car, they're going to school. Don't allow her to say that word. We'll get tons of complaints. So I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? I jump on the phone. Hi, Ruth. Great. Loved your first book. I give a follow-on book. Get your act together. She said, no worries. Get your shit together. Kids in the car, Ruth. You know, let's not say the word. She managed to say shit 15 times before I even got my next question in. And I'm only saying that to reinforce that everyone gets their shit. If you haven't had enough of it, it's all ahead of you. And the older you get, the more shit you get. And I think what Raymond and John are trying to say is it's not a competition. We all get it. When it happens out of sequence, it tends to affect us more. For me, I'd already lost good friends. My dad, my sister died 6 months before Richard, and I think the reason I got through all of those things is because Richard was next to me and he was by my side, and he brought me through all of those things. And then suddenly, like Raymond, he had that claret flavored urine that happened one day out of the blue at 48. And before we knew it, they had found cancer in his kidney and his spine, some 3 in his liver. And because they did radiotherapy to help the tumor in his spine, he was in a wheelchair within 3 weeks. My lovely, vibrant, happy, wonderful husband was suddenly sitting in a wheelchair, going through very toxic chemotherapy. They couldn't, it broke his spinal column, the radiotherapy, but they couldn't fix it. And we only had months. So all the things that Raymond gave me an insight to, I wish, because Richard was a broadcaster, 20 years with the BBC and the health correspondent of all things. So anybody who does anything to help people to understand more about prevention, more about the journey, is very helpful to people like me, because, you know, for Richard, it was fast. Before I knew it, he was dead. I can't tell you in my life, like, it was so devastating to me. It was like having a glass of wine every New Year's Eve with the person you want to spend your life with, and all of the things you plan and your future. And we'd worked incredibly hard. We'd taken out remortgages, and, you know, finally we're about to see the fruits of our labor, and suddenly he was no longer with me. And I think the fact that he was gone affected me hugely. I couldn't see a future for myself. And it took me quite a while to figure out how I could start a new chapter. Comedy saved us, by the way, me and Dara. He's a massive fan of Vicar Street. Even at 12, he used to go down and the lads would let him in and he'd put a hat on and hide. And he likes all the really dirty comedians. So he really, but he's a complete, you know, Dara loves comedy. And every evening we watched a comedy. You know, I looked up the 100 top comedy films of all time, and I got them all. And we would sit down and go through Monty Python and anything. So even if the day was terrible for both of us, we had that 1 hour when we laughed in the evening time, and it really helped us. And then I think, my way of dealing with it was being a workaholic. And, you know, I found myself going back into broadcasting. My brother started to run the business. I didn't want to be the queen of any boardroom. And I was doing news talk, getting up at 4 o'clock for over a year to replace Ivan Yates. And then I started doing RTÉ Cork on a Friday afternoon. I was still doing a season of Dragon's Den. And then I did 13 episodes of The Takeover, which was looking after a business, all kinds of different kinds of businesses in RTÉ2. And I was sitting at Christmas, I think 2 years later, and Oliver Callan was up there doing a little sketch, and he said, you know, there's loads of jobs in Ireland, it's just that Nora Casey has them all. And it really struck me that it was absolutely true. I was kind of afraid that time would run out in the middle of the night if I didn't work as hard as I did. I think once my media miles were finished, I got a chance to do an RTÉ program about death, and a great authored piece to go back to the hospice and relive some of the journey that I wish I had lived with people who were facing their own mortality through cancer. I also got to work with young women from the traveller community, and, you know, I've been working with the Magdalene women, and we did a documentary last year, and we have 2 more to do. So like you, Raymond, I think sometimes all of this terrible shit that life gives us, it turns us into people that we never expected. And here you are, a quite prolific author, and I speak as somebody who's on deadline for 2 books and hasn't moved an inch forward while you've published 2. But the one thing I've learned in my life is the importance of giving testimony. When I spoke about domestic violence, it wasn't because I wanted to. It was the worst thing I've ever had to do, going back there and talking about something which I barely admitted to myself, to be perfectly honest. And even to describe some of those incidences live on TV when I actually was almost back in the room, you know. I found it incredibly difficult. But testimony, like what Raymond has just given, and John and yourself, Edwin, is the only important thing we can leave the next generation. You know, we all grew up in a world where we didn't talk about child abuse or alcoholism or mental health issues or issues around sexuality. And where did that get us as a society? And then brave people over the last while have started talking about those issues, and we've managed to change. So for me, it's not what I did in life. As I hate when people say, oh, you made money and you did this and that. It's what life did to me that really matters to me. And it's the fact that I can let other people know that I didn't come beamed down from the planet, you know, serial entrepreneur, which is a terrible way to describe me, by the way. Serial only usually comes before something else. You alluded to it there that, of course, I've had my own brush with cancer. I have a reconstruction. When COVID arrived and I was doing lofty messages about living wider and deeper, and, you know, I don't know how long I've got to live, but I'm going to be doing all this lovely stuff about deep dive into my mind. And then we got hit with the other C word. In my family, the one thing you'll never hear me saying is I come from a long line of nurses, you will hear me say, but I come from a long line of cancer survivors. I don't often say, but cancer took a seat at my family's table, a bit like Raymond's. When I read about your dad, I'd no idea about your mum, but it doesn't seem, you know, too keen to leave us. And we had two of my closest family members, siblings, got struck with cancer. My younger sister in particular has been through 5 operations. She's incredible as the resident family nurse who, you know, runs around trying to do her bit for caring. Her resilience was remarkable. She's, you know, she had her lymph nodes, her full mastectomy. She's just had her reconstruction. And like Raymond, it was back in for infections and bleeds and all of the things that happen in between. But she put up a post on Instagram there a couple of weeks ago, and she's in the gym before they closed it, and she's going, here am I, you know, 6 weeks from, you know, and she's lifting weights and trying to get herself back to full strength. So she's unbelievable. But in my life over the summer, it's really been about cancer. It's about supporting the people in my life that I love very dearly through all of the trauma of early diagnosis, the difficulty of perhaps not having oversight over when your operation might be. I think the fact that all the biopsies and everything were delayed, and then, of course, the cancer patients were moved in Vincent's to one side of the hospital and the COVID patients to another. So the psychological harm that did was enormous in terms of, you know, was my sister a life-saving operation? Yes, they found, you know, cancer in many places and 2 different kinds of cancer, both lobular and ductile. So she was lucky that she had people who fought for her and made sure that she did have those operations. And touch wood, if I had it, she's over the other side. I would just say at the end, Raymond, that I walk, and I know you walk and John walks, and it's great. I chat in my head when I'm walking. I don't have 2 actually, so you're very lucky. I just have 1.
I can let you have one.
I just have a chat to myself, but there was something about reading your book, firstly because it's a very different style, and I'm found myself sort of in the meter of the way you were talking. I was saying to Edwin that when I read his introduction, I was saying, what the hell is this? Like, it took me a moment or 2 to kind of get where is this all going and who's talking to who. But I did think it was a very unique way, firstly of writing, but also the insight you give is phenomenal, because I started off telling you about me and all the terrible things that maybe happened to me, but that's because I'm a blended person. I'm not a dragon. I'm not a nurse. You know, I'm just somebody that all these things happen to, and that's who I am right now. And what you managed to do in that book is you showed all of that blended life that happens to somebody going through cancer. Firstly, the very raw and unvarnished, I would say, insights that nobody gives you. No Googling will give you, no doctor will give you, just to know absolutely what's going to happen to you. Give me the horror and everything, and then I can face it. But also the humanity of, you know, I've spoken about Richard and him being next to me when I went through some things. You know, your wife, when you talked about her and the loving relationship you have, and as much as you lean on her, and how important that is as you go through your cancer journey. And so not just people going through prostate cancer or any cancer, but people who are carers or who are living alongside people with cancer. But then the other part is that the rest of life happens. Your father died. You know, all of these other things happened while you were, it isn't, I've got cancer and the rest of my life is great. It's also that you're dealing with all of the other things that life throws at you as you go through it. So, I mean, I'm in awe of you. As I said at the beginning, I can't believe that you managed to get 2 out, but this one is very special and very different. And I do hope that people all over the world get hold of it, and you might have to do subtitles for them. So,
yeah, I thought about that.
thank you for asking me to join you. I was delighted, and it was great to hear you. And I would just say one last thing, that for all people talk about Twitter and all the badness of Twitter, and of course it has all those bad things. And I've been on it since Twitter started, so I'm an avid tweeter. But the one great thing about you, Raymond, is that you have made great Twitter friends. I am a Twitter friend, and many of the ways in which you interact on Twitter is how Twitter should always be. That lovely feeling of people coming together and feeding off each other and supporting each other. So yeah, you were laughing at when saying I was going to be the Phoenix Park ambassador. I think Raymond is the Twitter ambassador. Thanks for having me, by the way.
Thanks very much, Nora. Thank you.
Nora. So we're gonna have some questions and answers section here. So let me see what questions we have for Raymond. I think you've answered that one. Question, Raymond, how difficult did you find it to talk to Selena about intimacy?
Actually, not difficult at all. This book it's really from August 2017 to August 2020, but the other book deals with my childhood and all the way up. Child sex abuse and how that impacted on my cancer journey is dealt with in that book. But I met Selena when I was 10 years of age. She was my first girlfriend at 12, I think. And as we say in Ireland, we've been doing a steady line since the 1st of June 1978. We had the Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton relationship from 12 years of age to 15, and then we got our act together. And then we've been, we're the swans of the world. one partner for life. And I didn't find it difficult at all because of that, because we're so close. And what Nora was saying there, I personally feel at times that the carers have a more, nearly a harder journey to travel, because when you're the patient, it's happening to you.
Yeah.
And you know this, and Nora will know this. It's all happening to you. So you're in, not that you're in control, but it's happening to you. But when you're the carer, and I found this when I went from being the patient to being the carer with my dad for the last few months of his life there last year, like I'm looking on at him and I can see the pain in his face and I can do nothing for him and I can see the anxiety. And my dad was so fearful of death. It was one of the things he really feared in life. And it's a different journey, and in some ways I think it's a more difficult journey being the carer, So talking to Selena was never an issue and still isn't an issue,
Yeah.
It is what it is,
Yeah, I think definitely that feeling of it happening to you and you being in control of it. Because for me, one of the most difficult things was, like I mentioned earlier, was how it was affecting my family and my brothers. Mm-hmm. And there's a sense of almost helplessness that they might feel and you might feel for them. So that was kind of the most upsetting thing for me, because at least when you're dealing with it, you can feel like, I'll deal with this physically and emotionally. I can probably do this. But everyone else is kind of lost a little.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like one of the things Nora said, what I was trying to do with the book as well, and there is nothing when you Google it, the people explaining how they feel or all that inner thing, was to try and give that experience to people. So to say, I mean, one of the there's a few phases I hate in life. One of them is it's okay not to be okay. I hate that goddamn phase. And the reason I hate it is because if I come up to you and say, I'm not okay, don't rant back at me and tell me it's okay. What's the next phase we're going to say, And it's like most times when people come up and talk to you, they actually don't want you to answer anything. In fact, they just want you to stay stunned and let them unload. And then they let them drive the conversation rather than you feeling awkward about the conversation.
Yeah.
If you just let them drive, they will take that conversation and they will take you by the hand and they will bring you where they need to bring you. And then they will let you know when it's time to come into the conversation, you know. So, and sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes with Selena and I, it's not even a conversation. It's just we're out walking and it's holding hands or something, and you'll know because you get that little tight grip on your hand where, you know, the thought has come into my head or her head, and nothing has to be said. It's just,
yeah,
that's what it is, you know.
And it's about listening really, and you know, listening and really hearing the other person rather than trying to put forward a solution. It's just being there.
Exactly.
Just even not saying anything, because I had moments where, you know, nothing needed to be said. I just needed someone to be there with me.
It's presence, isn't it?
Yeah, it's presence, and I had that with some you know, amazing. There was at one stage it was a nurse when I was in a hospital, and it just kind of overwhelmed me, and like she knew not to say anything. There was nothing to say, but just her being there with me was a comfort, and was enough. So it doesn't always have to be like a solution, or you know, like I'm gonna fix this.
Yeah, it's like you know, liberation and freedom is not something you grant someone. It's actually something they grant themselves.
Yeah.
You are only truly liberated and freed when you give yourself permission to be liberated and freed. And you know, that's something that came in during my journey with cancer, because as I said in the other book, I talked about how the child sex abuse impacted my, as you can imagine, getting examinations. And you know, John and I and many a guy have talked about this. The biggest fear men have about getting that examination is they're going to like it. You know, I mean, they'll really be shocked if they walk away and they're on the, you know, I got to the stage where I was going into consultants' rooms and GPs' offices, and I was already undoing my belt when I walked in the door and getting the, you know, I was getting ready to get into that fetus position and I was nearly putting the gel on the finger for them.
Muscle memory, yeah. I had those where I'd have some kind of, I had to, some, you know, colonic irrigations, and you know, I'd go in sometimes and just go on my side, assume the position.
Yeah.
At least you had gel, Raymond. Today, this is with gel. You ran out of gel for me.
Did they?
Oh.
Well, it's when you get the doctor that says to you, "I've got small fingers," and I mentioned it in the book, and I go, "Oh my goodness, why are you even trying?"
There are some comments here from people just saying thanks to John and Raymond for talking so openly about incontinence, so intimate for all men, and actually rates higher than impotence for a lot of men too. So facts there. A lot of people saying, Nora, thank you so much for speaking so honestly and openly. Lots of Nora love there. Now, what are we doing here? Let me see. Would you ever think of turning this book into a play, says Lorraine Riley?
Well, you know, there is what is it? Isn't there the vagina monologue?
Oh, so
yeah, so maybe we'll have, I don't know.
The vagina monologues.
The vagina monologue.
Absolutely.
That would be a good one, wouldn't it?
And I'm available as an out-of-work comedian and actor to play one or both of those parts.
Does he have a good accent?
Oh yeah, I can do that, no problem at all. It's a question for me. Can I ask you, how has your cancer journey affected your stand-up comedy? Not as severely as COVID-19. To be honest, it gave me something to talk about. And it also gave me, like I was talking to you, Raymond, before, it gave me, instead of having a voice in my head and talking through in my head, I could talk and have a conversation with people. And I found that people really responded to me talking about it and making jokes about it. And I had friends of mine in the industry whose parents were going through cancer treatment, who came to the gigs when I did a full hour called Edwin Salmon versus Cancer, which is a very spoilery title. But they really did appreciate the fact that I was talking about it in public. Because if it's in the shadows, it looks an awful lot more dangerous.
Yeah, and I mean, it's I think humor is great. You know, I mean, as I said, I told you guys the other day, I was out for a walk the other day with this November thing, and I, saw this beautiful tree, and I was thinking I'll get a photograph better than Nora Casey now in the Phoenix Park, because this is all the autumn colors on it, and I'll show her. And I said, but I need to get under the tree to get the sunlight coming through to get the proper. So I decided I'd go down, and of course John wanted to be there because I went sliding down in the muck because of all the rain and everything. And I came home the next day, or that thing, and Selena was, "Are you okay?" And I said, no, I'm fine. And I woke up the next morning and someone texted me to say, "How are you feeling?" And I tweeted about it, and I said, well, I'm really stiff after it, but I've forgotten what it's like to be stiff. So it's not too bad. Now, all the cancer, the prostate guys will get that one. Or not, whichever. But of course, we must also say that, there are a lot of people who get prostate cancer, get the surgery, they get full control back of their bladder. There's no pads, they never have to wear them. So think on the positive.
Yeah.
They get full erectile functioning back, so they don't need any pumps or blue pills or orange pills or anything, and everything is fine. So they will save on the handkerchiefs though. They won't need them anymore. But they will get functioning back, So it's not always a case. It's just that's my journey. Some people will find bits in it that they can relate to, and some people won't be able to find bits they can relate to.
Could I just, I know there's probably another couple of minutes, but just, I suppose it falls to me as representing the Marie Keating Foundation, just to say a massive thank you to Raymond for dedicating his book to the Marie Keating Foundation. I mean, it's a magnificent gesture, and it's not just any book, it's a really special book. I mean, we at the foundation have been working with men for quite a number of years, but really over the last 3 to 4 years, our prostate cancer and our men's health campaigns have begun to get some traction. And in fact, this year, Ed, we had a Stand Up for Your Prostate campaign with 5 comedians, and we're hoping to build further on that next year. We were supposed to have a night in the Laughter Lounge. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But the whole theme is about getting men to talk about their health and to tell each other, and to be, what you've done in the book, Raymond, is really, I mean, it's very powerful because it's talking about something that's very real, and it's very hard for men. We're not underestimating or belittling anything that you've gone through, but just to be able to look on it with such great humor is amazing. So thank you so much again, and thanks to Nora, to John, to Ed, and to everybody on the panel. I mean, we've had a fantastic evening, and I do encourage everybody to buy the book. I mean, you'll shed a few tears, for sure, because it's quite emotional. So honest, and Raymond, I think you'll help an enormous number of people just in kind of highlighting to them what possibly is ahead of them. And I know prostate cancer is probably a lot of people say it's one of the better cancers for men to get. And that can be a little bit undermining. And I know as a breast cancer survivor, when people say that about, 85% of women survive breast cancer, it doesn't make it easier when you're going through it. It's shite when you're going through it. And I mean, people don't understand the side effects of any cancer. So to put them out there so really in your book, Raymond, and yet to look at it in that kind of sardonic and with that filter of comedy, I think it makes it much more palatable for people, and knowing that you and John are living with and not dying from prostate cancer. And look at how, I mean, as Nora says, you are inspirational people because you have survived and you've learned. You're not playing the victims. You are kind of looking up to your illness, and you're challenging it at every step. So just to say thank you again from all of us at the foundation. It means a tremendous amount to us that you've dedicated this to us. And we really intend to develop our services for men going forward. We're working on a plan to develop more survive and thrive programs specifically for men, because we know that men talk to shoulder to men when they're together. Like, a lot of our programs are open to everybody, but mainly women currently sign up to them. So we want to organize a few specifically for men, and we really hope that the men that in this small community and through Twitter and through all our different male patient advocates will encourage each other to avail of those services once they're up and running. So thank you again. I'm sorry, I probably interrupted Ed there at the end.
No, couldn't have said it better. This is the book, backwards titled. I think Nora has
it's the right way around.
So I have the wrong way around. So if people want to purchase the book and support the great work Liz was talking about there with the Marie Keating Foundation, you can go to mariekeating.ie and you can buy the book, and all proceeds will be donated to the services that they provide.
And can we just add that so there are symptoms if you're getting prostate cancer, if it's ongoing, but a lot of people have zero symptoms. I know John hadn't got them. I hadn't got them. I know a lot of men who had no symptoms whatsoever. And the only reason my prostate cancer was discovered was because in my mid-40s, I insisted, much to my GP's dismay, that I get a PSA test included with all my other bloods every year. That's the only reason. Now, the PSA, if you got a high one, doesn't mean you got the cancer. You can then go for a scan, and then they'll see the cancer there, and then you can go for a follow-up biopsy. Okay, but it's important to be aware that, like, it's a simple blood test. You're getting your liver, you're getting your heart, you're getting your kidneys, you're getting all of those tested at your blood. Just tell the GP, add in the PSA. And if they don't want it, just tell them you're the patient, you want it. You don't, exactly. You're the one that's in the room paying for the blood test. It's nothing off their skin. And then if it does rise, well, then you go back and get another one in 4 weeks. And then if it's still rising, you go get a scan and see a urologist. We get the scan first before the biopsies. That's what I would recommend. And the other thing I would like to add before we, as well, I have a few people to thank, but one other thing I'd like to add is that you will get prostate cancer if you were born with a penis. Okay, the penis and the prostate come together. They're not separated. So this was brought to light by a very good friend of mine on Twitter who's heavy up in the transgender community. And it's one of the things she advocates when she's out talking with the transgender community, to say that we are women now, but we were born with a prostate. So we still must get our prostate PSA done. And that's an important thing for people to remember. The other thing is, the book, two people who proofread it at the very beginning were Simon Daly and Lorraine O'Reilly. I want to really thank them a lot for giving me feedback on it and making sure it had the right tone to it. Orla for publishing it, and Jennifer for editing it. And to me, there's some graphics in it. I don't know if any of you can get to. I don't even know what page it's on, but if you can quickly look through your book, there's one where I'm in the shower. There's a guy called Carl Smith, who's a graphic designer, and I met Carl by purely going on, that's it. I met Carl by purely going on LinkedIn one day and saying, I'm needing a graphic designer who will do pro bono work to help me get some illustrations together. And he came up with some things, and the cover design he did, and Carl did all this himself. He didn't charge a penny, so we could make sure as much money as possible go to the Marie Keating, and he helped me with my previous book as well. But some of the graphics, and particularly that one in the shower, he had read a draft, and he came up with that. And when I saw that drawing in the shower, it blew my mind, because that was me in that shower one day. You know, of course, one of my friends said, "What's Raymond doing wearing an ankle holster gun on his leg in the shower?" But of course, we had the education tell her it was a
very toned Raymond, I must say.
Well, yeah, you know, I mean, you know, I was one time. after 2 C-sections, I'm no longer toned, I'm afraid. I was getting my PSA bloods done the other day, and the nurse said, "Oh, you're in for surgery again." I said, "Yeah." So that's my second C-section, male C-section over. And he said, "Well, what was it, a boy or a girl?" And I just told her it's inconclusive. We haven't decided yet. But yeah, and look, all charities have been hit this year, and particularly cancer was kicked to the curb for a long time during the first lockdown. There was no scanning, or screening done, or anything was going on. And places like the Marie Keating Foundation, if you look at Marie Keating Foundation, all their events had to be cancelled because of COVID. So like 100% of everything you spend on the book when you buy it from them goes to them. There's nothing going to anyone else. We've got it all going to them. So buy them loads. Go buy it for all your friends, and indeed, don't worry if people haven't got prostate cancer. Don't worry about it. They'll still laugh at it anyway. 1 in 8 men are going to get it. 1 in 4 if you're black don't know why, and they don't know why either. If you've got a brother or a dad that had it, you have a higher risk. And funny enough, well, not funny, I suppose, if your mother had breast cancer, you have a higher chance of getting prostate cancer. And a lot of people don't realize that either. So be vigilant, guys.
Yeah, and that's a very good point you make, Raymond, about you driving, asking for tests and getting it done, because it just makes sense. It's like you get your car NCT'd every year, you should get your body NCT'd every year as well. Yeah. And also a very good point about it being symptomless, for sure. Yeah. Someone's suggesting Jeremy Irons for the audiobook in the questions on the side. Should we get in touch? I know he lives in a castle somewhere in Cork, so he's probably well protected if we can get past the moat, and we'll get a microphone in, and maybe he could do that. So I think that's it.
I think that's a wrap. Yeah.
No other questions, or if anyone wants to add anything at this point, go ahead.
Best luck with the book. It's an amazing thing you've done here with both books. My very best wishes.
Thank you very much. With
not only obviously the book, but the proceeds, and as you said, the Marie Keating Foundation. It's an organisation that's very close to my own heart as well. And congratulations on every success with it.
Thank you very much, John. Appreciate it.
And Raymond, firstly, thank you so much for asking me to join you guys this evening. When I read your book, I know people are talking about the audiobook, I thought it would make just an amazing animation. I just in my head felt that those 2 characters needed to be animated in a really cool way. So if you have good contacts, and you have on Twitter, I would definitely put it out there and see if one of the animation companies might pick it up. And even if they did one of the chapters, it's just a fabulous dialogue, and it's begging to have one of those kind of very good animation, cool animations. And I would say one thing, my son is now 21, and he lost his best friend to cancer, neuroblastoma, when he was 9. So his father, going through the same thing, and cancer to him is the most frightening word. He lives his life worrying about me or my mom or anybody. And I'm going to encourage him to read your book, because actually you take a lot of the fear out of cancer for young people. So I wouldn't say your book is in any way related to prostate cancer. It's very much a much wider, anybody would get a huge amount from it, because I think in a very real way, you've given such honesty to that journey that other people can walk after you in your footsteps. So well done, and I hope it goes really well, and especially because I totally love the Marie Keating Foundation. They've been fantastic partners with me, and I hope I with them over the years. They're a great organization, and I tried to, in a couple of sentences, tell you about the difficulties of somebody going through cancer during the pandemic, and organizations like the Marie Keating have been there, not just asking for money, by the way, because they rarely do that, and please give them the money because they rarely do that, but acting as advocates, which we all need, as strong advocates for people with cancer. Thank you.
Thank you, Maura. Okay.
Well, thanks everybody. Thanks Raymond for kicking this all off. It's great to virtually meet you, and I hope to physically meet you at some point in the future.
Well, I tell you what, Ed, when we meet up, we'll get that guy Stephen Bradley to buy the coffee.
Excellent, excellent.
Because his wife has a new program, so he has a few bob.
Great stuff.
All again. Thank you, Ed, for emceeing, and it was
my pleasure.
Launch. Thanks a million, and lots of success, Raymond, with the book. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Liz. Take care of yourselves.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Okay,
everyone.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
On.